Hello, welcome to episode 33rd of my life journey. This is Kehan. In the previous episode, I talked about why advice needs time for us to get digested and understood very well. I want to continue from there today and talk about why any kind of results and big decision in our life must be judged based on the long-term outcomes that we see, not the short term or short run outcomes. And this is, I think, an important issue that I've been facing in life. Recently I talked to Sar, my life coach, and discussed with him that why am I seeing so much resistance in life from environment, people, internally. I mean, I've been on this path for quite a long time. So, but are we in the right state and position or situation now? Like, I was expecting maybe to see mm, not that much resistance anymore. I mean, at least not this notable, or in different shapes. But why is that? Like, I see so many, I can say, still things that I really don't uh, expect to see and don't like to see, but they are still there in life. And the way he explained this short-term and long-term perspective point of view was very important, very eye-opening, I can say. It really changed the way I look at it, look at this path growth journey. Now, let me explain to you what I exactly mean by some analogies, some examples that we understand it better, because we had a very long talk and discussion about it, about so many of my private and personal things. So I think I have to put it in example, in some type of analogy. Imagine two people who have been in a long-term relationship, and recently things got very problematic between them, and you know they are experiencing a toxic relationship right now. Is it clear? So by toxic, I mean, in the worst case scenario, they are just hurting each other uh, very, like, openly and clearly, verbally or like physically, anyway. And in the best case, that could be like not letting the other person follow their interests, becoming the better version of themselves and kind of be who they want to be. Rather, you know, somehow preventing the other person from getting their freedom, not letting them do what they want, like how they want their life to be. So when you're in such a situation, such a relationship, and you're struggling, maybe you're having fights with one another, you may come up with the idea of getting separated, just ending the relationship. Uh, well, think about that. What happens when you end a relationship? In short term, definitely both sides of the relationship will suffer, right? Will go through sadness, sorrow. They might experience lots of different emotions at the same time. Their mind is still there, stuck with the you know memories and things that was there between them. So what I want you to imagine and see is that in short term, if you ask any person who just ended a relationship, and let's say the relationship was good at a point, but then went to sideways, or then they realized it's not healthy and good anymore. If you ask them after, let's say, a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks of ending a relationship, it varies for different people, but for everybody there's an interval that if you ask them, like, how do you feel, do you think you get the right decision, like, what do you think, they'll definitely you know tell you Oh, I don't know. I think I made the wrong decision. I really missed him or her. Like, I think we have to talk more and, resolve our issues. We need to give each other more opportunity, chance, time. We can figure it out. You know, almost everybody will go through this phase of, regretting the right decision that they made because it hurts simply because of emotions. Emotions always come in the way to kind of, how can I say? At some point, they make you blind to reality. But if that person, if both sides let time pass, let's say for some months or after years, and then they go and you know, have their life and figure life out and become better version of themselves, maybe find a better place, relationship, better life, career, situations. If you ask them like after a few years, like what do you think? They will say, "Oh, that was the best decision we both made in our life, sure he is doing very well now. I'm doing very well. Like it's very good that we ended it, and we our both of our lives got better. I can say. Could you imagine that? I hope you could. So this was one analogy, one example. There are lots of same type of examples in life. Let's go through another one. You want to change your diet. Suddenly you realize like, okay, maybe you're getting sick too often, or maybe you have some chronic disease, or like you went to doctor, you took some tests, and you know it is revealed to you that there is something wrong about your diet. Or even you just, I don't know, researched and found out that as there's a certain diet that will benefit you a lot more and you want to change. Almost changing to any diet, because I tried changing my diet a lot in life, like different diets. I tried like vegetarianism, like being a vegan. I tried like ketogenic. I tried carbohydrates, like everything. At certain points, I tried, what was this name, carnivore, like only meat. Like quite, I tried a lot of diets to just experiment for myself, how they feel, how they look, how my body responds to them. And there was not a single example that I went through that when I was changing, like for 1, 2, 3 weeks, I had so much like a stomach ache, stomach discomfort. Let me be very honest with you. I was like spending going to toilet a lot. It was a mess. So I can say for changing to any of these new diets, there was a certain phase that I felt like, okay, this new diet is like nonsense. There's no benefit in this new diet. It's wrong. It's not working. I mean, let me get back to the old diet. This is just not good for me. You know what I mean? Not knowing that, there is an adaptation time that my body will go through because it was just fueling itself based on the old diet. And there are lots of things from a medical standpoint that my body will go through that makes it unhappy. And in order to get used to the new diet, it will resist as much as it can until it is just adapted to the new uh, way of feeding and the new way of fueling your body. So after yeah, I remember when I changed my diet to ketogenic, uh, for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, I was really sad. I thought it's not working, it's not good. Like, why am I just giving up carbohydrates and sugar and all this, processed food, etc. And after, like, I just, you know, stayed with it, kept going. And after like 3, 4, 5 months, then I saw the results. Like, my body weight was more stable. I felt more clear. I mean, I had less cravings, lots of, you know, benefits. And again, when I sat and thought about it, I was like, yeah, uh, if I like made a decision to quit in those first weeks, I would just end up convincing myself that this new diet was totally wrong. But now, after the adaptation phase passed, I'm seeing like, wow, this was great. And the same thing happened for me with cigarettes and my addiction to cigarettes. I mean, when I was trying to quit, or like even when I decreased the amount of the cigarettes I was smoking, it was like my brain was forcing me and convincing me that the decision you're making is wrong. Go back to where you were. And like, let's just go on. I mean, this type of life is much better. I feel like a bit, I feel need for that nicotine, and I go and smoke, and I just take a breath near the window or in like when in open air. And it's so good. There is no life better than this. My brain was literally convincing me that this is a better approach to take. But once I, really let it go, once I passed that phase after like 2 or 3 or 4 months, I sat and thought again. And I was like, okay, I mean, in the past, I had to go for it like 5, 6, 10 times a day. And I had to just, mm, distract myself or like interrupt my work or whatever I was doing 5 to 10 times a day. So I just sat and calculated and concluded that I couldn't really go into deep focus mode for like few hours, because I was constantly just needing that nicotine and I had to just go and feed my body. It was like a way to release stress for me. So, but now that I just don't need it, my body automatically, doesn't produce that much stress. So many like things have changed, and again, when I thought about it, in the short run, if I decided, if I judged, it would be wrong. Even though it seemed right, it really like I could logically claim something that was wrong because I mean, that logic would stem from my emotions, right? So I could not see the real world clear because it was, again, short time. So let me see my notes and if I missed something. Okay, I hope you imagine these examples. The point that I want to make today is that, if making decisions, if judging the result based on short-term outcomes for habits and like addictions and like these smaller things in a scale compared to bigger things need, let's say, weeks or months, how long does it take for the adaptation phase of changing your identity, becoming successful, totally like changing your mindset, your lifestyle, your surroundings. These are deep things to think about, to meditate really about. And Tsar opened my eyes in this way. Like, he said, okay, you saw those things, took time, and not a short time. Like, few weeks or few months is not a very short time. So what do you think? What do you expect from these big shifts, like this growth journey, changing who you are, how you think, how you see, how you behave? And like in a more down to earth example, I can say, like, you expect yourself to become successful, and you you think the adaptation time for that is like a few months. I mean, there are people who got successful in a few months, that their success look like their what they achieved looks like that it was done in a few months. But if you really look deeply, it took a lot more time for that person to reach and gain that type of identity, that type of personality, with those type of abilities and ways of thinking, set of skills, and capabilities they just added to their arsenal, I can say. So yeah, in the end they just did something that took a few months, and suddenly it, boom, uh, made, let's say, a lot of money. And they say like, oh yeah, it took just 3 or 6 months. No. What I want to say is that I was totally an average person, or maybe below average. And SAR opened my eyes toward, to see from this window that this might take more time, and the adaptation phase for what we want, a state where our life is really on point based on different aspects, financially, relationship wise, body and health wise, everything, your personality, who you are, integrity. These things might have a much longer adaptation phase. So the short term for these are a lot longer. So 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years even will be considered as short term. Let me just say, this does not mean every painful thing that we go through is like valid and it must be there. No, we're not crazy, okay? Definitely always there are like ways to think and like try to kind of make things work out, and be better, somehow. Maybe we can optimize something, we can avoid or prevent a really bad outcome to take place by putting some mental effort or physical effort in some shape. I don't mean that every painful thing is fine. I'm just saying that if our decision is taken from a place of clarity, honesty, being aligned, making yourself aligned with what you want and who you want to be, and you really are coming from a place of, mindfulness about your decision that you made. The rest of the things, the discomfort, the pain, the sorrow that will follow it, that is something that is totally natural, normal. Just, take it with a grain of salt and, let it be. That's just part of the process. I hope I could, that should not, I want to say, that should not scare us back. That should not like, that's not a reason for giving up. So if you are experiencing them after maybe a long time in your perception, in your like expectations. If you consider 1 year or 2 years after starting your change, if you're still like facing and encountering lots of difficulties that are not under your control, this is very important. The pains and sorrows that I'm talking about is about things that you don't have control over. It's about like people, it's about environment, it's about other people's decisions that affect you, or so many internal things that you might go through, maybe just a small example of it is getting sick for a week or 2 weeks, so you cannot like operate properly, and that may even hurt some aspect of your life and take you back, but that's just a part of the process. So for small things, maybe short-term comfort matters, but really for big decisions in life, as we always make, on this path, the question should be different. Let me tell you what I mean. The question must change from this: does this feel good right now? Does this feel right now? To this question: will this make me stronger, clearer, and more aligned in the long run? This is a question that we have to always ask. And we don't want to judge the results in short term. We just want to do it until the results talk themselves. We don't need to judge anything until the time that the results just, are representing everything, that is the time that the, long-term thing that we are talking about has arrived. So let me summarize today's talk so we remember what we need to take, what we need to, have in mind from today's episode. In one sentence, a right decision may feel difficult in short run because every deep change has an adaptation phase. That adaptation phase might be longer than our expectations. But if it is aligned with the long-term outcomes that we want, we have to give ourselves time before judging the result. And I add something to it right now, and letting go of the short-term judgments that our brains make or maybe others make. Yeah, in the next episode, I want to continue from here and talk about another point that I discussed with my life coach about why some questions cannot be answered until we are really ready to understand and absorb their answers. So it's better to like keep them aside for later to deal with them for some big questions in life. So yeah, I hope you got something out of this episode and I could, transfer the knowledge, the information well to you. So I hope you keep up your great work. See you next time. Take care.